All right, welcome to the Explainer. Everyone talks about the Bitcoin halving and the price, but today we're going to look past all that, past the charts, and dig right into the engine room of the Bitcoin network. We're going to see how the halving, an event that literally cuts miner revenue in half, actually forges a stronger, more secure network for all of us.
Seriously, just think about that for a second. What if your salary was cut in half every 4 years, like clockwork? It sounds pretty brutal, right? Well, that is the reality for Bitcoin miners. These are the people and companies securing the entire network. And really, understanding their challenge is the key to understanding what makes Bitcoin so uniquely strong.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the harsh economics of that pay cut. Then we'll see how that triggers a global arms race for computing power. That race, in turn, creates a survival of the fittest situation, which is shaping the future of mining. And then we're going to tie it all together and talk about why this actually matters to you. Okay, so let's start with the miner's pay cut. To really get what the halving does, you first have to understand how these miners even make a living, and what happens when their main source of income gets slashed, literally, overnight. And wow, this really paints a picture of just how dramatic that shift is. Before the halving, a miner's income is pretty straightforward. They get a big fixed block reward for their work, plus a little extra from transaction fees. But then the halving happens and bam, that main reward is sliced clean in half. Their entire business model has to change in an instant. So what do you do? How on earth do you survive a 50% pay cut overnight? Well, you've really only got 3 levers to pull. You hunt relentlessly for cheaper electricity, you pour millions into upgrading to more energy-efficient hardware, or you just have to hope and pray that the price of Bitcoin itself goes way up to cover your costs. The reality is, most of them do all 3. Now, this pressure on every single miner, it doesn't just stay local. It scales up big time and creates this massive global competition. And this is where it gets really fascinating. It's a full-blown arms race. So let's talk about a key concept here, hash power. The simplest way to think about it is like the network's immune system, or maybe its security budget. The more total computing power, or hash power, that's dedicated to the network, the stronger and more secure it is from any kind of attack. And check this out, because this is the wild part. This is the paradox at the heart of it all. Even though the reward for mining gets chopped in half, the total security of the network, the hash power, it doesn't just grow, it explodes. It's grown exponentially after every single halving. The competition just gets more and more fierce. Yeah, so that leads to the million-dollar question, right? Why? Why on earth would more and more people jump into a business where the main paycheck is guaranteed to get smaller and smaller over time? It just seems completely backwards. But there are some really powerful economic forces at work here. Well, the answer is pretty simple. Miners are playing the long game. They're making a bet. They fully expect that cutting the new supply of Bitcoin in half will eventually lead to a higher price. They see a path to long-term profits, and the whole industry is professionalizing with these huge, well-funded firms that could operate at a massive scale. Okay, so all this intense pressure, this long-term thinking, it basically creates this brutal economic gauntlet. Every 4 years, the halving kicks off this survival of the fittest event that ripples across the entire industry. And a really great way to think about this is as a great filter. See, this isn't an event that weakens Bitcoin. No way. It's a programmed stress test that literally purges inefficiency from the system. Only the miners with the absolute cheapest power and the very best technology can stay in the black and keep their machines running. And we saw this play out in real time, right after the 2024 halving. It was fascinating. Less efficient, older mining rigs, they got switched off almost immediately. But the bigger, more professional farms, they expanded to pick up the slack. And unbelievably, the total hash rate quickly bounced back and rocketed to new all-time highs. It forced the whole industry to get leaner and even greener. And you have to understand, this whole process, this consolidation, this professionalization, it's not a one-off thing, it's a trend, and it's only going to get faster as we look towards the future of mining. And man, the pressure is just relentless. Look at this. In 2028, the reward drops again to just over 1.5 Bitcoin per block. Then it gets cut again in 2032. It's this programmed decline that just keeps marching on until, one day, that block reward eventually hits 0. So, to survive, the whole business model has to evolve. It has to.
The miner of the future will rely way more on transaction fees. They might even earn revenue from securing other network layers on top of Bitcoin. But no matter what, they will always need to be investing in the latest, most efficient hardware just to stay in the game.
So, what does this all mean? It means the era of some hobbyist mining Bitcoin on a home computer? Yeah, that's long gone. The future of mining is a massive, institutional, big player industry, and it is hyper-focused on optimization, efficiency, and operating at a truly global scale.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about miners and how they're forced to adapt in this crazy competitive world. But let's bring it back. Why should any of this matter to you as an investor, or even just someone who's curious about all this? Because this brutal, nonstop economic war between miners, all of them fighting for a reward that keeps shrinking, well, it has a very direct, very powerful consequence. And that consequence is security, immense security. This constant drive for efficiency, it forces miners to deploy more and more computational power, and the end result is a network that is protected by a global wall of hash power. And that security, that sheer difficulty and insane expense of trying to attack the network, that is the bedrock. That is the absolute foundation of trust in the entire Bitcoin ecosystem. So for anyone holding or using Bitcoin, this great filter is actually fantastic news. It means higher security, greater trust in the integrity of the asset, a risk of a catastrophic attack that gets smaller and smaller, and it's proof of a model that is built to last for the long haul. At the end of the day, the halving isn't some kind of bug in the system. It is the system's most important feature. Think of it as a reoccurring, punishing stress test that the network has passed every single time, and it always comes out the other side stronger and more resilient than it was before. So the miners are getting bigger and more professional to survive, but they aren't the only giants in this playground. So the real question is, how are the biggest financial institutions getting ready for this? And why do they always seem to be accumulating Bitcoin before it happens? Well, we'll tackle that in our next explainer.
Subscribe and visit Web3 Newswire for visibility and credibility of your Web3 projects.